Well, this is Doug Cogswell. I'm the President and CEO of Advizor Solutions, and I'm here with John Pierce, and we're going to run through our new 6.4 release. So, John, what's in this thing?
So in this release, we've done work in 3 areas. We've provided extensive new capabilities for bringing together data from a variety of sources into the analysis that you want to do. So you can both more easily bring in data, and you can also do transformations and calculations on it once it's been imported into Advizor Analyst to get the data into the shape that you need to support your analysis. We've also made it easier to author projects. It's easier now to copy an existing chart to another place in the project. It's easier to use maps, and it's easier to customize things such as the labels and columns. And finally, what we've spent the most time on is improving our predictive modeling capability. We've included new algorithms for both modeling data and predicting new results that you can use to both understand the relationships in your data and predict values within your data. We provided some new ways of looking at that, at what your model looks like. We've provided ways of storing the model so that it's easy to re-execute whenever you refresh the data so that you can see the results included in charts and also predict values.
So we're going to run through the release and just take you through each of the different areas. First, our product line has consisted of Analyst, which is our authoring tool for loading data, creating new metrics, setting up visualizations, and Analyst X, which is the same as the Analyst, but it includes predictive modeling tools. We added a new data blending tool which runs in front of Advisor, so you'll see in a minute this can pull from a variety of data sets to do transformations and puts tables somewhere that we and other systems can load. And we found that pretty important, especially as we work with more unstructured, dark data from a variety of systems, and tables need to be appended to each other, merged with each other, transformed. And we obviously continue on with our Advisor Server, which is a Windows Server application with multi-threaded to light browser or iPad front ends. Our managed hosting platform, which is us running Advisor Server in the cloud with administration and security. And then the Desktop Navigator, which is a version of the Analyst for deployment that actually operates like the server except that it's a Windows app. John, let's talk about the new data blending tool.
Okay, so the data blending tool is a totally new addition to our product line, and it's meant as a tool that allows you to get data from multiple sources. It allows you to transform it in a variety of ways, and then take that data and bring it into Advisor Analyst for doing detailed analysis, prediction, and other activities. So you define the transformations that you want to do using a simple graphical data flow language. You can bring in data from a variety of sources. You can have steps which transform it, filter it, merge it, append it in a variety of ways, and then output that and import it into Advisor. You can also use this for some other capabilities, such as, for example, pushing email alerts or providing outputs to other systems.
Great. So we're going to jump in now and look at some of the authoring improvements and just basic function. The data in the summary sheet, we've enabled text search in the summary sheet. We've always had this in the data sheet, but it's new to the summary sheet. And we make it easy to relabel columns in either. So let's take a look. I'm going to jump into an Advisor project. Here's a data sheet, typical layout. We're going to go to this other page. So here's a summary sheet, a bunch of names and giving amounts. It has, if you open the tool on the bottom, there's a little search, text search, which has always existed in the data sheet. It's now on the summary sheet. So if I want to, for example, look up Hickman, just type Hickman in here, and it grabs all the Hickmans. So there's out of the 90,000 entities, there's 10 Hickmans, and it drops the data down to that all over the rest of the project. Let's bring people back. So these column headers, these are coming from the tables we're loading from, so they can be set by the expression engine in us, or they can come straight from the table. The summary sheet puts labels on the back about the algorithm or the sum or average. You want to change this at the bottom of the data sheets and summary sheets. There's a new icon called Edit the Column Title. So if you click this, it gives you the current field names as they are. Let's say I want to make, instead of TLG ... sum, let's make it TLG. And I click, just type it, I click OK, and the chart has changed. So I'm going to just keep going here. We covered data and summary sheet updates. We're going to look at chart copying and maps authoring simplification together. I'm going to go back to the project. And let's say I want to create a new page, and I want to have this summary sheet exactly as configured on the new page. So I go to the task view, create a new page. I'm going to call it, I'm actually going to put a map in here in California too, because maybe I'm trying to find who is in the Fresno area. So here's my California maps page. What I want is this sheet here. So in the top toolbar, we've got the charts. Couple of new icons up here. Select chart to put on the clipboard. The charts are labeled. I want to grab the summary sheet prospect list. I want to go to this page and I want to drop it in. So that's, I know those of you that do authoring, often our best practices are to have a counts chart with some summary stats, and these summary sheets on almost every page. And now you literally can just go, copy it and drop, put the chart in. Now let's look at adding a map. So, this project has a map page over here. It's got maps of the U.S. and the Boston metro area, the New York metro area, but we want to drill on California. There's no California map in the project. We've had, to date, the maps have been up on a website. They're now all installed with the app. So let's click New Map. I'm going to go here, open the map wizard. I'm going to rip through it. There's a bunch of tables. I'm going to put on the entity table. There is actually in here, a city and state, I think combined. It's called, down here, LG city plus state. So there's a field where the state and city have already been combined. Several have asked. If that's not the case, where you just have city and state separately, I can build it. So in this table, the left field would be city. I'm going to stick a comma between them. The right field is state. It gives me a preview of what it looks like. I'm going to call it, since it's already one of those, 2 or something. Click OK. So it's now created my combined city and state field for my map. It's got a bunch of geocodes that ship with it. Asian cities, German, North American city-state is our best North American zip codes at the city level. They're in English. I want that. Next, it tells me that not everything has, city that fits to this, because they either don't have the location or they're some other country. That's fine. This is if we're putting links between the entities in the map. This would fit for something like, we've done work with airlines where the map is plotting airports, and then you want to have links between them based on delays or route traffic on the flight. So it can be the nodes with links. There's no links in this data, so I'm going to skip it. It talks about where I can get more maps. Right here, I've now got a whole pile of maps, though, and they're organized into continents, countries, metro areas, and states. I want California, so I open this. Lo and behold, there's a map of California. I click it. I click Open. Just take the defaults. It tells me a bunch of stuff is not in California. I keep going. Here's the map of California. Let's fix the page layout. We're going to swap this one over here by grabbing the top left corner. Move this over. And then the map sets up, you need to, there's some controls to zoom it. Let's make the thing a little bit bigger because I want to zoom. I'm going to move it around over, just grab it and stick it over here. So you just got to lay the map out a little bit. And then, the question was, I think here, and put this back on mouse selects data, close it up. We were looking at the Fresno area, so the map's up. I just circle over here. And it's grabbing, go back to my first page. There's 52 people in the Fresno area. Here's a list of them. I can right-click and export the map out. Not the map out, the list of people in the Fresno area in my desktop, and boom. So, that whole process of adding a map, we've just provided a lot more with the maps and the geocodes, and it's literally that simple. So I'm going to go back to our storyline here and turn it back to John.
Okay, so we've extended our expression builder, our data calculation engine, to provide a number of new different calculations. So new ways of adding data to your project. So one of the ways is that you can now calculate the distance between 2 points. Another capability is that you can do cross-table calculations. So previously, you could only add data using the data that's already in a table. Now you can combine data together from multiple tables into a single table. And finally, as a minor extension, you convert a string to uppercase. So looking at the distance function, the distance function looks like this. You give it a source location in terms of a geocode, latitude, and longitude, and then you give it fields that are in your table that give the latitude and longitude for the data that's in the table. And it'll add to that table a new field which has the distance between those 2 points.
So let's take a look at how you'd use it. I'm going to go back to my California Maps page, and maybe, we're really interested in San Francisco, which is sitting right here, and you want to look at the distribution of distance of the entire population away from San Francisco. So I would go to the expression builder. I want to build an expression. I'm going to do it in the entity table, and I'm going to call it, distance from San Francisco. Especially for modeling, as we get into that, this kind of data is useful. It's because the distance does matter. There's a lot of situations where you'd want to see this. So down under here, under functions, general, there's something called distance. I just double-click it. And so now I need to put in the latitude and longitude of San Francisco. It's actually in from the map. If you go to the entity table and look up anything in San Francisco, you'll see it. But I've already copied it down. So it's 37.78. And then the longitude is minus 122.42. And then these other ones are actually in the table. This is the variable. So one of these needs to be the constant of where we're calculating from. The other is what we actually want for the other location. So go to the table. At the end of the table is a lot of fields. Our geocodes came in as North American city-state latitude, so I want that. I just double-click it, sticks it in. I'm going to then add the longitude, double-click it, it sticks it in. Now these things have commas in, so I just got to put quotes around them. I'm going to just stick quotes. And I'm going to go over here and stick quotes. There's a comma in the middle, looks like a separator. And I click Evaluate, and it gives me distance in miles, which obviously you can convert using the expression builder from San Francisco. So if I want to see the distribution, I'll pop up a histogram here, and I'm going to put it on the entity table, and I'm going to put it on, what did I call the thing? Distance from SF. That's logical. And kind of here's going to stick it across the top. Here's my distribution from San Francisco. It's a bunch of stuff right around San Francisco. I guess this would be the middle of the U.S., and there's an awful lot on the East Coast. If I want to grab, the stuff that's, 1,000 to 1,500 miles, I can grab that. It's obviously not in California. I can go back to the first page. There's about 10,000 out of my population that are there. And here's the list of all of them, and we can take it from there. So let's go back to the storyline and drop into the cross-table calculations. I'm actually going to put this in the slideshow mode so this builds.
Okay, so especially for doing analytics, you quite often want to bring data from multiple tables into a single table. So in analytics, because the model can only be built on the relationships in a single table, if you have things which are being stored in separate tables, you need to bring some kind of summary into the single table so that that can be part of your model. In the current process, what you need to do is, for example, if you're at an entity table and you wanted to bring together the gifts that occurred in the last 5 years, you might have to do something like this. You start with the entity table, you go to the gift table, you add a field to it, you filter it down, You filter it down, you roll it up, and then you join it back into the entity table. So this is obviously, although it's doable, it's a cumbersome process. So what you can do now in the expression builder is use this single expression, which says, okay, between the entity table and the gifts table, linked across the ID field, run this expression and give me a distinct count of the results. So this is an easy way to bring together data from multiple tables into a single table, especially for use in analytics.
Yeah, and I know our consultants actually are the ones that proposed this, and they're really excited about it because, as John said, in modeling, this is where you want to synthesize data out of the activities, events, committees, click-through tables into some measure in the entity table that can differentiate people. And this is perfect. It's one expression in the entity table that just does all of this and brings it back.
And so this link function that does cross-table calculations lets you compute data in another table and then bring it back and aggregate it in a variety of ways, such as any, average, max, min, sum, and distinct count.
So let me just show you where this is. I'm going to go back into the project. So we're going to go to the expression builder and just take a look at where it is. I'm going to just put this on the entity table again. I'm going to start off by calling this link. And it's under operations. It's actually under functions. I lied. Down at the bottom, cross table. So if I just go in here and I want to just double click this thing, it gives a form of what John described. And this is specific that it needs a single quotes around each of the variables, and they're just exactly as they are in the tables, and then it just executes and puts the calculated field back in the entity table. In this case, it would be called, we call it something like number, committee, last 10 years or something might be a good example of where you'd use this. So back to the storyline, the predictive modeling. So yeah, John's going to take us through kind of what's new here. First, we're going to do an overview of the capability, and then we're going to go in and actually build a model using the new interfaces and algorithms.
Okay, so the analytics that are available in Advizor really generate a mathematical model of the relationship between explanatory fields and a single target field in a single table in your data. So the process of creating that model is called training the model. And the model that gets generated describes the relationship between these multiple explanatory fields and the single target field. So this model can be both used to look at what those relationships are and to also to apply it to new data to predict what the values of that target field are. So the models that are generated are mathematical models, and the particular technology is multiple linear regression. So basically, what's being created is a formula of the form that you see in this slide, relating the multiple explanatory fields in the single target field. So what the model generation is doing is creating these coefficients for each of these terms, and the magnitude of those coefficients helps give the influence of that field upon the target. Now, the target can be either a continuous numeric field, or it can be a numeric field that has the values of exactly 0 and 1, which is called a classification model. So this kind of model can be used if you want to understand things that are in and things that are out, or how a particular subset compares to the whole.
So often in our examples, say in fundraising, a classification model would be propensity to come to a reunion. You can't forecast it. It's either in or out. Or it could be large donors, because if you're trying to forecast the very end of an extreme spectrum like $1 million plus donors, you're probably better off doing a classification model and looking at it as a membership, although you could do it either way. And there's a variety of other things, like if you're taking the top right quadrant of a scatter plot, that's obviously a classification model because it's a combination of dimensions. You're grabbing a subset and then comparing it to the whole.
One of the nice capabilities in Advizor Analyst X is that you can graphically select a set of items using the charts and then build a model on that selection state. So rather than have to create a field that you want to create a model on, you can basically interactively create a field by interacting with the charts to define the subset that you want to understand better. As we said, these models are both descriptive and predictive, meaning that they tell you what the relationships are, and they can also be used in the future to predict the target values. So the process of doing analytics in Advisor Analyst X is you start with a question, which is something that you want to answer, and you have to be able to frame that question in terms of a single table that you've loaded, and the fields in that table are either you pick a single field, which will be the target field, and multiple other fields in that table, which are the explanatory fields. You need to condition the data so that it meets the needs of the modeling process. So in particular, this means things like using the link function that we talked about previously to bring in data from other tables. You might use the distance function that we talked about to add this sense of distance to possibly use as an explanatory field. You may want to do things like omit date fields, for example, and replace them with intervals. And so there's a variety of conditioning processes that you need to go through. Finally, you train the model, which is a fairly simple process of pushing a button, and the model gets generated for you. Then you look at the pages that could produce that describe the model graphically to help you understand it. And finally, you can use the equation that gets built by the modeling process to apply when you refresh your data so that you can predict these values for new data. So unlike in the previous capability that we had in Advisor Analyst X, and now when you generate a model, the model equation can be stored with the project. When you do that, whenever you refresh the data in the project and reload the project, then that equation will be rerun just like any other equation that you've produced using the expression builder, and it will generate new scores on the data or new predicted values on the data. In addition, for classification models, the probability scores that are generated can be binned as another way of looking at the way the classification model has categorized the data.
So let's build a model and take a look. So we're going to go back to our project we've been working in. Let's get out of what we had open before. We'll go back to giving history. So our population, our base population here is 54,000 people, which is all of the rated prospects. Let's see, maybe we want to determine, what makes the ones that give 100,000 and up different from everybody else. So this is a classification model. We have a target of 1,339 people when we do a multivariate regression against the base. So to run the model, you go to the task view, build predictive models. A panel comes up on the left. And let's slide this over a little bit. And I'm going to build a new model. And I'm going to call it, it'll pick a name, but I'm going to call it large donors. And we're not going to argue the merits of whether this is the smartest model in the world. We're mainly trying to show how the software runs. It's in the entity table. And I can do two things. I can forecast a numeric field, or I can generate a new field from the selected. So this is telling me it's taking the current selection, which is the 1,339 as the target, and it tells me that. So there's two kinds of model. It's determined by whether you select one of the fields in the table that are numeric, or whether you go with the current selection, which is classification. And here's all my explanatory factors. We're primarily trying to look at, say, in this example, engagement. So we used that cross-table link expression to figure out how many alumni committees they've been on, how many gifts they made in the last 5 years, how many of the last 5 years they've made a gift, and so forth. I'm just going to take those factors just to make this simple. I just check the ones I want. Normally you do this in probably a little more thoughtful way. I click train the model, so it's running a bunch of stuff behind the scenes, and it's going to come up in like a couple more seconds with the model output. And this is running against 55,000 rows, so it's pretty efficient and quick. So it's building a couple of output pages. We'll look at them in a second once they get built. This is the primary page. Let's hide the modeling panel, and it's got the go-to-meeting stuff in the way here. Now I can hide the modeling panel. And then it gives me this view, gives me a heat map view. So there's two views. This is the primary view. So over here it's telling me the influence, which is a combination of the coefficient John talked about and how many what the measure of that field for the target is. So numbers of alumni committee participations is the biggest influence, followed by how many of the last 5, 10 years they made a gift, how many reunions, and so forth. And the math is showing up over here. These are the scores. It's showing you the range score from low to high, and this is a pretty steep curve. There's just not a lot of people with this potential is what it's telling you. And then it takes the score and what we've added from before, it bins it, so it just breaks the score into 5 regions based on the axis here. So here's the 4. The highest group is 27 of the current donors are in it. There's 48 total predicted. The low end is a lot of people, and it's a much smaller percentage. Now I can open the panel. Say I don't like those names. I can now change the name. So I've got the ability to name the bins. Maybe this is 0. I want to call it low, and I want to call 4 high. And click OK. So it's now labeled these bins. Now these bins and these scores are in the entity table, and they're an expression in the expression builder. So these in other charts and other pages can be put against these, and that formula will re-execute when the data is loaded and rescore the population and rebin it. So that's new and improved from before. I want to look at that in a second. I also want to just show down here the filter we had on was used in the building of the model. I can determine whether I want to not only exclude those rows during training, but also doing prediction. Because in this case, I found characteristics of people who were rated, who gave, and I'm trying to differentiate them. But maybe if I had some of the other factors, then I'd want to actually score everybody. So this, I want to do not predict rows to the model where I can click this. It's going to only do the rated process, copies the filter down. But I can edit this and put other filters in there. So what I want to last thing I want to show you what this did. So I'm going to go back over here to my project workshop, which is where all the detail behind the project is. If I go to tables, it's going to have in here on the entity table. So the model wrote 2 fields in here. It wrote this score large donors. So it's telling me the score from the large donor models. These things are scores from prior models. Ignore them. And then up here under predict large donor bins. So the large donor bins, if I look at it, it's binning in 5 equal ranges off the score. If I go back and look at the score, the large donors, kind of here's the scores, and it's this calculation which is in the expression builder. Here it is. So it wrote this expression in there, and I can, if I want to, I can edit it here, or I can re-execute the model and I'll rewrite the score here. And whenever this project loads, it's going to re-execute this score with the new data sets and recreate the bins and update the charts and all the pages. So that's pretty much it with the new modeling capability. A bunch of capability that has been expanded, and I guess if I was to go another minute, if you wanted to modify the model, let's just do some of that. Because say I want to edit this model, so I can go back at it and then edit the model. And I can rerun the model with different fields and so forth. So it's very easy to edit, delete, view, cancel the model, and really iterate with it, which is one of the things we recommend. We're an analytic sandbox where with this, especially the new cross-table calculation and the blending in front, it's possible to bring in all kinds of data that were hard to work with before and synthesize it into metrics and then play with them in here. And see if they make a difference, and then think through, is this causal or is this just coincidental, and just edit the model till you get what you want. Then the model is saved, and the score is in, and it'll update as you reload data going forward. So I don't know, John, you want to say, let me cover the landscape here. There are some updates which we're just going to flash up here. So beyond the themes of the release and those kind of core feature areas we just went through, there's a bunch of other updates that deal with things like capacity and performance, and I don't know if there's anything else in there.
Yeah, so as always, when we have a new release, we fix some things which weren't working correctly, or which provide more reliability and robustness with this release.
Yeah, and if you want more detail on that, just let us know. We can send you the list. So thank you for your time. Hope you enjoyed 6.4, and any questions, let us know. Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.